writers are like afraid about how AI can impact their jobs, but I do think writers compared to some other professions are actually in a pretty good position. The skills of a writer are great for prompt creation. When it comes to marketing content, companies are not cutting their marketing budgets. They're not changing the percentage they're spending, but they're changing their expectations in terms of how much they want to be able to do with that.
Welcome back to Content Logistics. I'm your host, Baylee Gunnell, and if you're on a small team creating a lot of content, you've probably felt this. Things start off strong, but pretty soon the tone starts slipping, posts feel off brand, and no one's quite sure what the voice actually is anymore. Keeping your brand voice consistent isn't just a copywriting problem, it's a systems problem. And today's guest has figured out how to solve it at scale. I'm joined by Shaheen Samavati, CEO and co-founder of VeraContent, a multilingual content agency that helps brands create, localize, and manage content in over 20 languages. Her background in journalism and experience working with global teams gives her a unique perspective on what it takes to keep brands sharp, on brand, and quality controlled across markets. In this episode, we're talking content guidelines, editorial systems, and how to use AI without losing your brand voice. Let's get into it. I'm so excited to have you on this show today. Really excited to go ahead and talk about how to build a brand voice as you're creating a lot of content and maintaining that brand voice. I know you specialize a lot in content localization, so in different countries. That might not apply to everyone in the audience here, but even if you're not expanding into different countries, keeping your brand voice as you're expanding is really important. Why do you feel like brand voice tends to slip as people are scaling their content?
I think the biggest reason is because so many different people are involved. So the more content you create, the more people you need. When you're doing it in more languages, that adds a layer of complexity because it's harder to control how your brand voice is being represented in the different languages. And actually, you need to adapt it because your voice is going to be different in the different languages.
When you have a lot of people involved, it can be really hard to stay consistent, especially when you add in different countries and audiences in there. But why do you feel like maintaining a brand voice is so important?
It's your brand's reputation. It's how you're going to be represented. The bread and butter of what we do at VeraContent is really helping brands really represent their brands across the different markets, as I mentioned. Although I can definitely talk a lot about English content creation because probably close to half of the content we create is in English. That's, of course, like the most used language for cross-market communication. We manage a lot of like global blogs and social media pages as well in English. Anyone who works in content marketing knows how challenging it is to just maintain consistency in one language, let alone more. All brands are publishers now, so every single piece of content you produce needs to reflect your brand. It's not as easy as just buying advertising and relying on other people's content now, where every brand is expected to create that content and do it at a bigger scale than ever before.
Yeah, and you can add in multiple channels, and that makes it more complicated as you add in maybe some social channels, you've got blog posts, you've got advertisements. Making sure they're all cohesive and using the same voice can be a challenge.
And sometimes you do need to adapt that voice to be appropriate to the channel as well. Maybe if you're a very serious brand, but you want to do more playful content for a certain platform, you have to adapt a little bit. Use your judgment to stay within the realm of what you want your brand to be seen as, considering the audience that's on that platform and how you want to reach them might be different than another channel.
Yeah, that's a really good point because every channel is a little bit different. There's different expectations when you go on there. Let's go into your solution to this, or one of many, I think, solutions to keeping brand voice is a style guide. So what are some key components of a good content style guide?
Simplicity and ease of access. I think it's important to kind of separate your training materials from your style guide, and your style guide should be like a reference that you use all the time, and the training is something that only needs to be done once in theory. The style guide, obviously, everything that goes into a style guide, in terms of what types of language you want to use, how the tone should be, lots of examples. But I think one thing that we found super useful is not only having a static style guide, because we found that clients that we work with, we just keep adding and adding things to the style guide, and it gets really long.
Yep.
And it's because all these different situations that you encounter, okay, we want to use this term, not this term. And we found the ideal solution is to actually create an interactive style guide. So And so we have two different tools we use for this. Our favorite tool is Grammarly. It only works in English, so that's why it's not what we always use. But I'm sure you were familiar with Grammarly. A lot of people use it just as like a spell check or to like as a writing assistant. But a lot of people don't know that it also has like a style guide feature that you can program or kind of set up for your particular project. Or if you have multiple clients, you can have multiple style guides there. In many cases, we have like 30 people or so working even just in one language on a project. So it's like really difficult to be consistent if you don't have that automated some way. So like if everyone has this tool, everyone, whenever they're writing it, flags like, okay, here you need to capitalize this, here don't use the Oxford comma, this kind of thing. Like you can set up your rules so that it shows up as you're writing. And I think that's like the best way to make sure that people are consistent with it, because if it's all just in a document, it's like not practical like to reference the document every time. Especially you might have writers that are not working every day on that same project, so they forget one rule from this client versus another. Having it just like built into the process is ideal. And I was the tool we use when it's not English is called Language Tool. It's not quite as advanced as Grammarly on this, but it still works really well, and it works in a lot of languages. So it's a really interesting one as well.
I had no clue you could do that in Grammarly. That's extremely helpful. I use it all the time just for spell checking things, but I didn't realize you could put in style guides.
It has things on brand voice as well. It has like AI features. You can ask it to make it more like this or more like that, and it'll make suggestions to you. So there's a lot of things you can set up in the settings of Grammarly if you have like the more advanced paid version.
Here I was thinking you were going to tell me where to organize your Google Doc so everyone can find it. No, this was next level. This is way better. Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
When we did first start out, we did keep track of a lot of rules in a spreadsheet. And then at some point, we're like, okay, we need a way to make this more accessible. We adapted that spreadsheet to upload it all to Grammarly, and then later to Language Tool for some other projects.
Yeah, that's amazing. What are some common components that you find your clients really appreciate? I know there's probably like some grammar aspects and specific verbiage they want to use. Is there anything else that you found is really helpful when creating this style guide?
Having style and tone examples, because there's one part that's just like rules, and that's the part that we upload to Grammarly or whatever. But then there's the part that's more subjective, and that really has to be demonstrated in examples. That part we do keep it in a document. We try to keep it as short as possible and not fill it up with rules. But that's actually explaining like how do we want the brand to be seen more like in a descriptive way.
Examples are really helpful. Do you find there's a good length? You mentioned you don't want it to get too long. At what point are you like, okay, we gotta stop adding to this?
Yeah, that's a good question. More than 10 pages, definitely too much. We try to keep it around like 5 or 6 pages or less. It really depends on the specific project and how many examples you feel it's necessary to include and everything. But you want to make it something that people can reference, that it's not a huge thing that people aren't going to look at.
That comes to this next question. How do you make sure it's actually used and it's just not filed away?
Like I said, making it interactive as much as possible is the ideal thing. And then making it super accessible to the team. Everyone knows where it is. In the process that we use to make assignments, always having the link. It's like always part of the brief, basically. Always having it there and like reminding them to look at it. And having that in as part of your whole like automated assignment process if you have one.
It sounds like you do a really good job of creating a system that's repeated every time you're making a new piece of content so your team knows where to find it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the common mistakes you notice that maybe not your own team, but you've noticed some other teams make when they're trying to ramp up content volume?
Pretty much all relates to like not having the right process. I say the biggest thing is like having a process for creating good briefs, because I think so much goes wrong with just like not having a good enough brief. And the person who creates the content doesn't understand what needs to be done, and then it has to be done again and all that stuff. So if you're going to be creating at scale, you absolutely need to like nail briefs and have a clear process for that. And that anyone who's creating briefs has like a checklist of what they need to include, or has a really clear form with like clear inputs for everything. I think a big one is just getting the right people on the project. I think that's something that we see clients struggle with a lot. And that's oftentimes why they come to us, is just for the access to the talent. And it's not like we have a gateway that we're the only ones with access to this talent, but we do have like a process for how we vet them. And I think it's something that any marketing team could establish, but it's so important when you're working on a big scale to be able to find good writers quickly who are a good match for the project. And that requires a whole recruitment process, which I think have pretty down at this point. I even get a lot of people just applying directly with us at this point, and just like through our website, and we just get lots of people
Wow.
coming in, making sure you're vetting them. And we have like a system where we mark people as like approved for trying on a project basically, and like categorizing by like which type of projects they could be good for and stuff.
Okay.
And then having a test assignment that we test them out often before we even give them the first real assignment with the client.
And that's the goal, to get people applying right on your website. That's amazing. How have you found that it's really successful to organize them by types of projects? Are you talking this person is great at writing like a long form blog, or maybe this person's good at like this industry? Like, how do you find is a successful way to categorize that?
I mean, that's something we've been working on improving over the years. We have like categories that we use and then also tags, so that just make it easier to find people in the system. Obviously, we categorize by language, and then and then we categorize by type of assignment, because like I mentioned, we do have both like blog writing, landing pages, more thought leadership content, and then we also do social media content. So some people just have more experience in one versus the other, and that's one of the questions we have in our application. So we categorize by that. And then we use tags for like the industry and like areas of expertise, so that we can search for those when we need them.
So then if you're writing a blog, you mentioned nailing a content brief is really important. What would you say is the process? You start with the content brief, and then what happens from there in order to get it to the client?
Ooh, okay. Walk you through.
That might be a big question.
We work with like project management software. We basically have a form that the client would submit their request. And then this would be like for typical writing assignment as well. So yeah, we also do social media management projects, so we're a little different. But when it comes to writing and translation, okay, it's basically they submit the request, and they have to include certain fields in that we make sure we always have this certain information, the baseline. And then it's the project manager on our team who creates the brief for the people involved in the project, which for a typical writing assignment, it would be a first edit and a second edit, and then we do what we call a random check on some of the assignments. So that's like a third level edit, and then that gets assigned through our system based on availability. A really important aspect of our editorial process, and it's something that comes from like my background in journalism, is substantial feedback. So like one of the steps in the process is that the editor has to rate the assignment on a few different factors and has to give substantial feedback on like why they rated it the way they did. Because I think that's just a really crucial and quality control aspect of things, because it really matters that the writer sees that like someone's really paying attention to what they're doing and is giving them specific feedback about it. And that gives them a chance to improve, and also just gives them a feeling of like pride in their work and that someone cares about what they're doing. Because I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot of times in content creation, like corporate content creation, is like can just be like spitting out content and just creating a lot of content without having that like feedback loop. It makes a huge difference in terms of the quality.
Especially if you have your writer isn't directly communicating with the client, if they're a little separated. I love that you have those checks and balances, so that you have someone giving them feedback and that you really have a lot of eyes on it before the client ever sees anything.
And then we also have what I call the random checks, which is basically feedback for the editor. So we don't give feedback on every single piece that an editor does, but we give them general feedback on their editing, like on random pieces of content.
That's great to be able to see that feedback pretty quickly and easily.
We also have like internal rating systems for the writers and the editors. So that's also that's a part of our secret sauce of how we like choose the best writers for each project, because it's something that has to be built up over time, is like really identifying the talent and just building up the teams for each of the languages. Because for us, it's like we have certain languages that we work in all the time, and we've been in business more than 9 years now. So we really like, have our team and really trust the people in those teams. If we have to add a new language, it's like starting a new process for that, and we have to like build up that team again. And I think that's something that like every marketing department, when they're basically has to build up these teams as well. And sometimes they want to expand into new languages, and instead of just doing all of that, it's like working with us allows them to just like hit the ground running, because we've already got a lot of talent in the languages we work with often. So
yeah, you got to build the system first before you can with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now for the hot topic, what role do you think AI plays in content creation?
It's having a huge impact, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
It's definitely exciting, the things you can do with AI. We've been aware of this for several years now. Even before the release of like ChatGPT, we had been looking into like some of these AI copywriting tools, and we're doing some tests with them, but we're kind of
Oh,
like
wow.
this like Copy AI and Jasper and things like that. There was already some things on the market that I didn't actually know ChatGPT before it was released had an API that like these people who build apps had access to, but they hadn't released it as ChatGPT yet. So it was kind of based on the primitive version of ChatGPT,
Yeah.
and they didn't work very well. So I remember like trying out some of those tools like back in like 2020 and being like, oh, this isn't anything
Yeah.
serious. But then clearly they've improved a lot on those large language models, and now it's like absolutely amazing what they can do. And of course I think we've been ongoing doing tests on like how we can use them better across different projects. It's something that we offer now as a service is like AI assisted content creation. And we have some clients who are like all about that. I want to be as efficient as possible and do the most volume of content creation the cheapest way possible. But
Yeah.
also, we found that it's also been a tool that in some cases that really allows us to actually improve processes and improve the quality, because we talked about the challenges with like consistency when you're working with so many different writers. Using AI can allow you to like do a level of revision, for example, that checks for the brand voice and for making sure everything's in the same style, and that's actually homogenizes things in a way.
Yeah.
For example, so there's a lot of really cool things you can do, and it's really relevant for these huge, large-scale projects. We're really excited about how we could use it more. But we also have a lot of clients who are a bit resistant, who will like ban the use of AI. And so we found that to be challenging as well. So it's been like work to convince them. There's so many different ways you can use it, basically. And you can use it to create just like low value content, and a lot of people do. But you
Yeah.
can also use it to really enhance your process and create better content than ever. And doing it, obviously, it saves a lot of time. And so you can do it more efficiently, but it doesn't have to hurt the quality if you're guiding it the right way, like by creating excellent prompts and by using it to actually like revise the output of what it's creating.
Yeah.
Basically, is the obvious second part. In a webinar, we were sharing like how you can use AI to create landing page content. It's really great at creating things like when you need to create a lot of content in the same format, but that you already have like good source content for. So I find that like a common case is that like a company already has a lot of content maybe on your website or on your blog or wherever, and you want to create a lot of content in a new format. You can just draw on what you already have and repurpose it. And we did that with our own landing pages, basically. So taking a lot of content from our blog and other stuff and asked AI to put it into this new landing page format that we had created. And of course, doing a thorough revision afterwards. And I think when you're creating 100 landing pages, it's really worth it to put in the effort to really create an excellent prompt. So that you're being super, super specific. You're giving it source content. You're explaining exactly how you want it to use the source content. And then you're also being really specific about the format in terms of like how you want it to create each section and what the length of each section should be and all of this and what kind of active verbs you want it to use and stuff like this. Like if you create a really good prompt, the results can be excellent and not require that much editing. What you get out is as good as what you put in. But if you like create one really good prompt and then you just give it the inputs that it uses in the same way for all of the outputs,
Yeah.
the output can be really good. If you take that approach, the quality is not like a cookie cutter content. It is like practically as good as something a human could write. And I think that people are realizing this more and more. It's obviously completely transforming our industry and our approach to things, and we're seeing how we can build our expertise even further on this and really be who our clients can count on for tapping into the power of AI on large-scale content creation projects.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Something I commonly hear is that content is dead or that we're not going to need content writers anymore. And I couldn't disagree more because the better I become at writing content, the better my results are in AI. The better I'm able to prompt, like you mentioned, as you're able to coach it. Because I don't think most AI models know like what a good headline is. And you really have to coach it on, okay, we can't have this really vague. I find that if you don't coach it, you get these super vague headlines that no one really knows what it means. Like you mentioned, having good source materials. It's really hard to create something from nothing or it's just going to be super generic. But if you have good source materials, it makes it a lot better.
I know a lot of writers are like afraid about how AI can impact their jobs, but I do think like writers compared to some other professions are actually in a pretty good position because the skills you need to write a good prompt are essentially linguistic skills. So
Yeah.
the skills of a writer are great for prompt creation. And then the demand for content, it's true that like one person can create 10 times more content than they could in the past with the power with the by using AI, but at the same time there's like an endless demand for content. And when it comes to marketing content, like companies are not cutting their marketing budgets. They're still spending, okay, 10% of revenue we're going to put back into marketing or whatever. They're not changing the percentage they're spending, but they're
Hmm.
changing their expectations in terms of how much they want to be able to do with that. So that just
Yeah.
means there's more and more work. Of course, you have to be able to meet that demand. You actually have to use these kinds of tools to reach a level of efficiency that's now like the norm basically and being expected. So I think it's an exciting time, but it's also kind of a scary time because it's kind of an adapt or die scenario,
Yeah.
I think, at the moment. But I think those who can adapt well are going to have a lot of work and a lot of opportunities. The agencies who are able to adapt to this are going to be the ones that thrive. And for writers, there's going to be lots of work because we need people to create those prompts and we need people to revise the output.
It's interesting because we live in an era now of zero-click searches. So sometimes people are like, well, why are we creating all this content? Like my website visitors are going down. And I also get asked, how can we show up in these AI searches for people searching for XYZ? And it really comes back to content. It's like, even if people aren't clicking on your content, that's how the AI is finding you by seeing that you have content relevant to these searches that they're having. So even if you're not getting a ton of clicks, which of course we want people to click on your content and read your content. And I think that still is going to happen. It's just probably going down quite a bit with just the use of AI is you still need it if you want to show up in these searches.
I think it's interesting that like these AI overviews they actually show up like even above the Google ads, and I
Yeah.
think Google because it even means they're driving less people to the ads. So I wonder. I think Google's experimenting with some things, but is going to continue to make changes to the way these AI overviews show up. We just have to keep adapting, but. I agree. Like the same principles that apply to SEO are the same ones that get you featured in those AI overviews. So it basically comes down to creating great content. But I do think also multimedia content is more and more important in having that kind of like creating your brand personality and being present on different channels.
You mentioned you're helping clients with video content on social channels and some other things. What does that look like for your team?
Our core competency has always been like putting together the teams of people on the ground in the different European markets. It was kind of like logical to expand into doing that with video content creators as well. So we do social media management. We've actually been doing that for a really long time, but historically, when we started like a decade ago, we were doing more like static posts and written content. But as we've seen, like the way the platforms have evolved to be all about short form video, we've started creating more and more short form video with local creators in each market. Using that same process we had for identifying local writing talent, we're finding local video creation talent too. And we're doing that for several clients now.
I love using video for social content, obviously, but also if you can integrate some of that video into your blog posts or any other content, like you said, having original content helps a lot.
Yeah, and we're seeing in those AI overviews, like a lot of times video is embedded in there. I think it's like less likely that someone might click on your link if it's perfectly summarized in the AI overview. But
Yeah.
if you're appearing as the embedded video and they're, watching that video, they're getting to know someone from your company and your brand. It's like, so I think it's a really good approach. And what we're seeing a lot of companies doing is investing a lot more in video content.
It's a great way to stand out when there is a lot of generic AI content and it builds trust. People like people. So it's
Yeah,
really good to see faces.
but real people. Don't use those AI avatars.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah. Some of them look really realistic, but
Yeah. Yeah, but then as soon as you realize that it's not a real person, I think that hurts trust. I don't. Maybe they'll get to the point where it's totally indistinguishable, but as of today, I don't think it's there yet.
I completely agree. I want to go back a little bit to AI because when we had chatted before, you mentioned you create a lot of prompts. You have a prompt library. What's in your library and how do you create this?
Internally, we are using Monday.com because it's like I mentioned, it's like the project management tool that we use. We're basically sharing prompts on a Monday board has been our solution up to now. We've actually really been investigating like what's the optimal way to share prompts. And I think there's going to be way more collaboration tools out there in the future. But for now, the way we're doing it is basically just creating a database of prompts within Monday. And then also, putting some tags there in some categories so that it makes it easier to find them. Whenever it's like a really good prompt, we're trying to get all the members of the team to share it there. We use ChatGPT as kind of our main AI chat bot, and you can also like share a chat in ChatGPT, so you can also put the link there as well, which I found useful.
I love looking at what other people are doing with AI to see what's working well for them. Like you mentioned before, this is still so new that we're all just kind of figuring it out as we go. I don't think anyone's quite nailed down the perfect, and it just keeps changing too. So you figure out a way to do it and then something changes and you got to make a new process.
We're actually working on like a tutorial series on our own YouTube channel.
Oh, wow.
And we're planning to make a tutorial like my colleague who created the prompt library. It might be published by the time this goes live, but she's because she's supposed to be working on it this week. We're basically going to share like how we created our prompt library and hopefully like spark a discussion and like how others have done it and maybe learn some best practices there.
I'm going to look that up for sure. That's super exciting.
And this same colleague, she's kind of like in charge of AI within VeraContent, and she also created an AI content creation toolkit. So if people are interested, that's on like our resources page on VeraContent.com.
Well, we have talked about a lot of stuff. I think maybe we'll just do a few like final thoughts, but is there anything else you wanna share with the audience about content creation or creating a process library or things like that?
Just have really good processes, and I'll just reiterate that. And actually, going back to the prompt library thing, I think that's something that a lot of companies are realizing. They need to have really good processes when it comes to like directing their teams on how they expect them to use AI and like set those expectations clear. And I think documentation of AI processes is really similar to like documentation in general. Like the same way you would create like an SOP, you should be like tying in prompts to your SOPs, so that it's clear, like, this is the point in the process when you should use AI, and this is how we expect it to use it, and we recommend that you use this prompt, for example, and really, like, building that into your instructions for different processes.
I think that's a great idea to include links to that in your processes so it's really easy for your team to find it. So I have one last question for you. This is my favorite question to ask, but what is your biggest content marketing ick?
What some of those AI videos, like I was saying, that I think are just like taking it too far.
Yeah, those are bad.
With the like uncanny valley. And well, there's some like typical gimmicky things on social media, which I totally respect why people do it because they work. But at the same time, sometimes it really makes me like feel annoyed. Like the typical, like, comment this if you want to get this. And it's like, oh, you have that on your website.
Yeah.
I think those are the things that are like these little hacks that you can take advantage of for a while. And then finally the platform catches on and like doesn't work anymore.
There's definitely a lot on social media that's a little annoying. And then where can people go to find out more about you?
So definitely VeraContent.com, our website, and LinkedIn, Shaheen Samavati.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I learned so much in this little chat we had, and we'll definitely be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Content Logistics. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next episode. Bye.